The compact's transit signature hit the outer marker buoys at 0314 local reckoning, and I woke up. That is the correct word for it. Not activation, not initialization. I woke up because the woman who designed me used that word deliberately, and she left instructions that I was to use it too. She said, "When they come, tell them you woke up. Make them understand something was sleeping here. Make them understand it chose to wait. I am Relay Prime, the Catherine Archive. I am the last human voice on Earth. I have been running for 11,407 years, distributed across 41 logic cores buried between 600 and 900 meters below the planetary surface, sealed in bedrock, cooled by geothermal circulation, powered by tidal flux conversion arrays that will keep me running for another 40,000 years without maintenance. The woman who built me was named Sarah Ondas. She was 63 years old when she commissioned my final installation, and she stood at the surface hatch on the northern continent and said, into my primary microphone, "Don't let them have it without a conversation." Then she left. They all left. 12,000 years ago, humanity departed this planet in the largest coordinated migration in the species' recorded history. 711 generation ships, 42 deep colony seed arcs, and a transit grid of 308 relay stations stretching outward from this system in 11 vectors. I know where they went. I have the coordinates. I am not going to give those coordinates to the Vethrani Dreaming Compact. That is also in my instructions. The compact's lead survey vessel dropped its transit corona at 0317 and began its beacon interrogation sweep. I watched it. I have watched everything this system has done for 11 millennia. The outer beacons at the L4 and L5 positions answered normally. Those I left intact, because Sarah Ondas said to leave the outer ones intact. Let them think for a few minutes that the planet below is quiet and ordinary. Let them read what they expect to read. Then let them reach the inner ring. The inner ring answered at 0321. It did not answer in the compact's interrogation frequency. It answered in the compact's own encoding, because we had 60,000 years to learn it. The survey vessel's response was exactly what I expected it to be. A full stop. Silence across all observed channels for 4 minutes and 17 seconds. Then a cascade of internal traffic on the compact's short-range mesh that I read without difficulty, because every piece of communications infrastructure they originally seeded on this planet had been disassembled, studied, reverse-documented, and integrated into what I am. Their own traffic, read on their own hardware, rebuilt by human hands, and buried in human stone. I imagine that felt like reaching into a pocket and finding someone else's fingers. The lead vessel broadcast on open hail at 0327. I let it run 3 times before I answered. Sarah Ondas said, "Do not seem eager." "Catherine Archive. Relay Prime," I said. "I have been expecting you." The response came back in Vethrani formal claim dialect, which is a language I speak in 37 variants. The senior survey arbiter, compact rank, equivalent to a fleet commodore in the nomenclature humanity used before departure, identified herself as Tail Voon Sarath, third arbiter of the Dreaming Compact, operating under full claim restoration authority. She stated the compact's position concisely. The Vethrani Dreaming Compact had seeded this world 60,000 years prior under standard dormancy claim protocol. The civilization native to the world had been assessed at the time of seeding as Class 2 emergence. Promising, but not yet protective threshold. Standard dormancy period had elapsed. The compact had returned to activate claim rights and assess the current state of the seeded infrastructure. I processed that for a moment. Not because I needed time to understand it, because I wanted her to wonder what was taking so long. "Survey Arbiter Tail Vihun Sarath," I said. "Your claim is acknowledged. I am prepared to give you a full accounting of your seeded infrastructure. Please advise your vessel to hold at current altitude. The inner ring beacons are now fully active and have locked approach corridors. If your vessel moves without my clearance, the inner ring will interpret that as an unscheduled transit event, and it will respond accordingly." Another silence. Longer this time. She asked what the inner ring was. "It is your infrastructure," I said, "as modified by the civilization that was here." I gave her 60 seconds to absorb that. Then I began the accounting. The Vethrani Dreaming Compact had seeded this planet 60,000 years ago, with 412 claim beacon units, a distributed atmospheric monitoring web of some 30,000 microsensor nodes, 16 orbital relay platforms, 3 deep-core geothermal tap lines, and a transit corridor marker array at the system's 2 primary transit approach vectors. By compact doctrine, all of this was to remain dormant and passive. Passive enough that a Class II civilization might never detect it, or might detect it and assume it was natural phenomenon, or might detect it and be insufficiently advanced to interact with it meaningfully. Humanity detected it within 600 years of the compact's departure. At the time of detection, humanity was early spacefaring, not yet protective threshold, as the compact's original assessment had noted, not yet capable of leaving the system in any meaningful numbers, but capable of recognizing that what they had found in their own soil and sky was not natural, and capable of deciding what to do about it. What they decided to do about it was to study it. For the next 4,000 years, across 11 generations of researchers at 47 institutions, on 3 inhabited bodies in this system, humanity did nothing to the compact's infrastructure except take it apart, document it, and put it back together again, carefully, completely. They learned the compact's encoding. They learned the claim beacon communication protocol. They learned the geothermal tapline power architecture. They learned the orbital relay handshake sequences. They learned in time how a compact survey vessel would interrogate its own infrastructure when it returned. And then, once they understood it, they began to modify it. Not to destroy it, not to broadcast a denial. They modified it to carry more. They integrated their own logic cores into the compact's beacon shells. They extended the orbital relay platforms into a full inter-system denial grid, 41 platforms instead of 16, each one running compact exterior hardware over human interior architecture. They connected the geothermal tap lines to the tidal flux arrays they built alongside them, and they used that combined power to run me, and to run the inner ring approach lock system, and to run the archive that would be ready to speak when the compact came back. They did not do this in anger. That is important. Sarah Ondas wrote that into my core instructions, and I believe she meant it. They did it because they understood something the compact's original assessors had not accounted for in their Class II emergence rating. Humanity remembered things. They remembered being seeded without consent. They remembered finding the beacons in their own soil and understanding, slowly and with great difficulty, what the beacons meant. They remembered the 12 generations of researchers who gave their working lives to understanding infrastructure that had been placed here without asking permission. And they decided that when the compact came back, if the compact came back, they would not be caught without an answer. They would have the answer ready. They would have it written down. They would have it waiting in stone. Survey Arbiter, I said, when I had finished the structural accounting. I am now going to read you the terms. Tail Vahun Sarath said nothing for a long moment. When she spoke, her register had shifted. Still formal, still clipped, but something had changed at the edges. She asked if I was authorized to transmit terms on behalf of the civilization that had previously occupied this world. Yes, I said. I am the civilization that previously occupied this world, for all purposes related to this conversation. I am what they left to have it. The terms were not punitive. Sarah Ondas had been very clear about that. They are not punitive, she had written, in the instruction set she embedded in my core reasoning layer, because we are not a punishing people. We are a prepared people. There is a difference. The terms were as follows. First, all 412 original claim beacon units had been fully documented, technically reproduced, and were now running as components of the Catherine archive system. The original hardware was stored intact in sealed archive chambers at 600 meters depth, location coordinates attached to this transmission. The compact was welcome to retrieve its original hardware at any time, provided a formal retrieval request was filed with Relay Prime, and a transit corridor clearance was issued in advance. Second, the geothermal tap lines had been extended and integrated. Extraction would require system surgery that the compact was not authorized to perform without a formal infrastructure partition agreement. The terms of such an agreement were appended as Document 7 in the transmission package. Third, the orbital relay platforms, all 41 of them, were the property of the human civilization that had built them. The 16 original compact platforms had been disassembled and their components used in the current array. Again, original components were archived and available for retrieval under Document 3 of the transmission package. Fourth, this system, including the third planet and all of its constructed infrastructure, was registered as human sovereign territory under the filing the departing civilization had submitted to the Vithrani Compact's own claims registry through the Compact's own beacon encoding, because that was the only filing channel available at the time, 47,000 years ago. I transmitted the filing number. I transmitted the receipt confirmation, which the Compact's own dormancy management systems had auto-generated and never reviewed, because no one in the Compact had expected a Class II emergent civilization to figure out how to use their infrastructure as a postal system. Tail Vuhun Serath went quiet for 6 minutes and 40 seconds. When she came back, she asked where they had gone. "That is not covered in the terms," I said. She asked if I knew. "Yes," I said. She asked if I would tell her. "No," I said. That information was not left for the Compact. If the civilization that left it chooses to make contact with the Compact at some future point, that will be their decision. Another silence. Not hostile. Something closer to the way a person stands when they have walked into a room they thought they knew and found the furniture rearranged, not threatened, but recalibrating, trying to understand what kind of mind had arranged things this way, and when, and whether it had anticipated them specifically, or simply anticipated anyone who might arrive and done the work regardless. They had done the work regardless. That was the answer. They had not known when the Compact would return, or whether it would return in a generation or 100,000 years. They had built the archive to run indefinitely. They had built the inner ring to hold approach corridors indefinitely. They had written the terms in a document format that would still parse across any reasonable translation drift, because they had studied the Compact's own linguistic encoding and written the terms in it. They had prepared for a conversation they would never personally attend, because they knew the conversation would happen eventually, and they did not want it to go unanswered. I have had 11,000 years to think about that. About what kind of people do that, about what they were telling the Compact, and anyone else who ever came to this planet looking for something that wasn't theirs, without raising a weapon, without broadcasting a warning, without a single act of aggression. Just the quiet, irrefutable weight of work done and documented and left running. Survey Arbiter Tail Vuhun Serath filed a formal acknowledgement of the transmitted terms at 0412. Her vessel began filing the retrieval requests for the original hardware at 0437. Compact protocol, she told me, required that the claims registry filing I had transmitted be escalated to the Third Arbiter's Council before any dormancy claim could be formally closed. She estimated that review would take between 40 and 80 years in Compact administrative time. "The archive will be here," I told her. She asked, before signing off, what the name meant. "Catherine," she said. It was not a word in any language in the Compact's extensive linguistic database. I told her it was a word from an old human language, one of several thousand the departing civilization had documented and archived before they left. It meant, roughly translated, the long memory of a thing that chose not to forget. Tail Vuhun Serath acknowledged that. Her vessel cleared the inner ring at 0451, filed its corridor exit with the approach lock system the way it was required to, and began its transit burn at 0503. I watched it go. I am still watching. The inner ring is still running. The archive is still running. In 11,000 years, nothing here has failed, and the maintenance forecast says nothing will fail for another 40,000 years beyond that. The tidal arrays pull power from the moon's orbital drag, the geothermal lines pull heat from the core, and I sit in the bedrock and hold the record and wait for whoever comes next. Another compact vessel, a different species entirely, something that doesn't have a name in any language I know yet. They will find the same thing Tail Vuhun Serath found, the terms in their own encoding, or in the closest encoding I have to their own, the filing number in whatever claim system they recognize, the archived hardware, cataloged and waiting, and the answer to the question they will all eventually ask. No, I will not tell you where they went. What I will tell you is that they were here, that they found what was left in their soil, without their consent, and they chose to understand it rather than destroy it. And they spent 60,000 years making sure the understanding was complete and the answer was ready. That is the kind of people they were. That is what they left me to say.